Good afternoon to one and all present here. Welcome you all for this webinar. Well, today the topic and the guests are very interesting. Let me first tell you about the topic. Why have we chosen this topic for today's webinar? There is a fundamental contradiction at the heart of our democracy. On the one hand, rule of law is supreme. Everyone has to obey the law, and ignorance of the law is no excuse. On the other hand, laws are complex, difficult to access, and impossible to fully understand. Especially in India, barriers of language, education, and technological reach add to the problem of lack of legal awareness. Knowing the law allows people to protect themselves, assert their rights, and seek justice when they have been wronged. Laws were not written to be an exclusive niche product meant for experts. They concern everyone in India and are applicable to almost everything. Naturally, one would assume that laws are very accessible. As India grows as a society and an economy, it is important that her citizens understand the law that governs them. This can lead to a more informed citizen body and lead to an increased participation of the people in deciding the factors governing their lives. This is the only reason we thought we will have this topic as the topic for the day today. The guest for today is one of the most illustrious, reputed, knowledgeable vice chancellors I've ever come across in my life. Sir Dr. Sri Krishnadeva Rao. Sir, can we unmute and come up to the forum?
Sir Ramchandran, my friend, dear teachers, students of the GRD School of Commerce and International Business, good afternoon. It's an honor for me to interact with you all today on Introduction to Law and Justice. What I would attempt to do in another half an hour is to look at 4 important issues on this theme. Firstly, I would like to just start with the fundamental question of what is law. Then I will share 2 stories of great lawyers. Then the second issue, I would look at what is justice, as Ram has already mentioned about that interrelationship between law and justice, how it is complex, how it is difficult, and how it is integrated. Then I will look at what is this concept of access to justice. Then finally, let's look at the 4 pillars of justice system: police, prison, judiciary, and legal aid. And then I'll take your questions. What is law is a fundamental question which is difficult to answer. If you're students of philosophy, if some of you have studied law, we call as a jurisprudence, philosophy of law, many students hate that subject. Naturally, you have your love and hate in some of the courses you study in your management or commerce and other. Why? Because jurisprudence theory raises several fundamental questions. In fact, my teacher always used to say, before you study anything, there's a 3 fundamental questions: what, why, how. If you start thinking on that, everything in your professional life or your personal life That would be very interesting. That will provoke you to think. So therefore, what is law? In the legal theory, philosophers have explained. In fact, that's a jurisprudence or a legal theory everybody said something about. Naturalist, positivist, sociological school, realist school, feminist school, socialist school, postmodern school. It's an amazing, everybody looks at from a lens. But let's not go into this discourse. Of course, it is necessary as a student. You will grow when you start thinking. So therefore, don't neglect any theory, conceptual courses in your course. That will help you in wherever you are after you pass out from this college. But generally, law denotes, everybody synonymously call law is a norm, law is a principle, law is a rule. Of course, law is a body of official rules, regulations, generally found in constitution. I'll come back to that little later. All of you must read the constitution, not just 70 years of the Indian constitution. We started looking at preamble and other. Even if you are not a law student, you should look at the bare act of the Indian constitution. Of course, like a Bible, you should put a namaskar to the Indian constitution, but read, go through it. I think that will help you in your competitive examinations, wherever. So therefore, that's a constitution is a primary law of the land. In fact, all of us know every rule, regulation, principle has to be evaluated on the touchstone of the constitution, Indian constitution. Then we have legislation, several legislation. Also, it's interesting, you should look at how the law is made, how the law is operationalized. Then the third is the judicial opinion. You look at this as a students, you are more Shabarimala judgment, triple talaq judgment. So several things when the Supreme Court said, we thought Rama Janmabhoomi disputes cannot be resolved, pending for many years. So law is primarily a body of official rules, regulations, principles, which generally is found in constitution, legislations, and judicial opinions. Of course, law is necessary because it governs the society, controls the human behavior. And law is also an important instrument of social change. Look at when we are looking at the colonial India, post-independent India, post-emergency India. So we are looking at several laws have come up. Sometimes it is because of the social change. Law brings a lot of social change. So we look at, and knowledge of law also increases one's understanding of the public affairs. In fact, in the national law universities, we generally tell all our students, read the original text of the law. If you wanted to understand any decision, you should read the full text of the case. The original text of the case, starting from the facts till the judgment, how and what context, and we will ask the students to interrogate, look at why the court has given this principle, this rule, this judgment like this. So therefore, understanding of the law increases on understanding of the public affairs. Of course, lawyers are more known for their accuracy of expression, facility in argument, skills in interpreting the written words, as well as the understanding of the society, political economy, social values, and several other things. Now let me take a few minutes to explain to you Indian Constitution. I know, even though if you're not a student, if you are interested, not only you should read the Constitution, you should also, if you have a time, look at how the Indian Constitution is made, Constituent Assembly. Amazing work they have done. When you have gained an independence, there was no Constitution was there. Constituent Assembly sat, discussed, debated each issue. 9 volumes of the Constitutional Assembly debates will explain. The Indian Constitution has not just come up like this. So look at the adoption of the Indian Constitution on 26 November 1949, establishment of the Republic on 26 January 1950, of course, is a milestone in Indian history. But the Constituent Assembly debated, discussed for 2 years and given us this text of the Indian Constitution. Read preamble, beautiful expression, language, the text, the content. Every time you read, you get more insights. So preamble is the heart and spirit of the Constitution. Justice H.R. Khanna, who wrote a dissenting judgment in the habeas corpus case during the emergency and who has to sacrifice the elevation to the Supreme Court of India, perhaps of the Chief Justice of India, he said that right to life and personal liberties are the priceless possessions of the citizens. That's what he said. Habeas corpus cannot be curtailed, including during the emergency. That was a great H.R. Khanna. So the rights and values enshrined in the Constitution are the basis of India's independent journey towards the egalitarian society with great speed to wipe out inequalities perpetrated for centuries. And of course, we also have the 11 fundamental duties were incorporated in 1976, which underscores obligations of the citizens. So when you study law, the first fundamental law is the Constitution, Indian Constitution. Of course, it's a bulky Constitution. We have borrowed from several. It has become so bulky, but it is a very important text and a context and a document for every citizen should know, even though if you are not a law student. Doesn't mean education is not acquisition of degrees. It's that only. In fact, I say, if you are not a law student, you have an open mind to look at that. If you are a law student, you are very restricted. You will look at what is article, what is section, you confine to that. No, you should think about in a fresh. Then let me come to the 2 stories of the liars. This story of Daniel and Susanna, I don't know how many have heard. A great liar, Ram Jethmalani, who is no more. His son is another great liar, Mahesh Jethmalani, who is a great criminal law liar. We used to interact with him in the National Law School, Bangalore, and later in Delhi. So he used to tell this story. I thought I'll begin with that. He says, story of Daniel and Susanna. This is a story from Bible. An innocent woman, Susanna, was falsely accused of adultery by 2 elders. She was condemned to death. That time, if there is even an allegation of adultery, that will result in death. And our hero, maybe like our Rajnikant or Kamal Hassan. So this was an old biblical time hero, Daniel. Daniel comes from the crowd, gets up and says, Susanna is innocent. And he said, I want to question the 2 old men separately. And he asked them, where did you see her committing adultery? Each gave different place. The lady Susanna was acquitted. Daniel, Ram Jethmalani says, is the first liar in history, of course, because this liar has, in fact, even in the lawyering, you have to practice in the trial court. That's a cross-examination, no? Because cross-examination is a major skill, privilege of a lawyer. So Daniel is the first lawyer in the history. The lawyer has a knowledge of law, skills, eloquence, courage, speaking the power of truth, clear thinking, and above all, sincerity, honesty, impeccable integrity. That was the old conventional liar. Of course, we also have good liars. We have also other kinds of liars. So that's about the story of Daniel and Susanna. Let me look at the second story. All of you know Mohandas Karamchand Gandhi, because my teacher always says, at least say this full name. We call as a small name. So Bapuji, Mahatma Gandhi. At least let us remember. So how law has changed Gandhiji? Look at that. So this was true in the case of people including Gandhiji. He went to England to study law, barrister at that time, at the age of 18. And then he spent the later part of 2 decades practicing law in South Africa, and then returned home to India at the age of 45. Look at this person who is a completely different man, different person. I think that has changed. Gandhiji has written in his autobiography, and others, those who have said, law not only helped to transform Gandhiji's personality, it offered him a laboratory for creating his philosophy of non-violent disobedience. I will disobey an unjust law. Champaran Satyagraha, anywhere you look at, Gandhiji has transformed. I think that attributed to his as a lawyer. Let me look at the second issue. What is justice? I said, justice is a complex concept, mutually coterminous with law. St. Augustine, who was a natural law philosopher in law, once said, without justice, what are the kingdoms but great bands of robbers? That was that fantastic expression. If there is no justice, there is no law. So justice is so integral to law that not only philosophers, but even ordinary people tend to identify law with justice. So therefore, this expression unjust law seems like oxymoron. Furtherance of justice is thus considered as the primary function of law, and law devoid of justice is like a ship without a rudder. Let's look at the varied notions of justice. As my friend, colleague always says, like beauty, it's difficult to confine or define the concept of justice within the narrow and strict definitional boundaries. But I would look at justice as a very important idea that is called as an ameliorative function of justice, emancipatory function of justice. So while celebrating the role of law as a leading light for positive progressive change, for ameliorating conditions of the poor, vulnerable, and marginalized, one cannot lose sight of the fact that it has also has unjust laws, comprehensively nullify the strides made in any or even every sphere. We cannot forget the Holocaust. We cannot forget the apartheid, slavery, and even colonization, where law was used as a primary mechanism to perpetrate injustice. If you look at Amartya Sen's book, An Idea of Justice, Amartya Sen and Professor Upendra Baxi, always they discuss when you look at justice, also you should look at injustice. And you have to compare and contrast how the justice system can help in reducing in the injustice. So therefore, these are the most glaring examples. But law, justice has a ameliorative function. So let's focus on the positive side of the justice, which helped in creating several stumbling blocks since 1950 to almost 70 years of the Indian Constitution, how the law has traveled to reach and to provide access to justice. Let me come to the third part, access to justice. Gujarat Legal Aid Committee, way back in 1971, Justice P.N. Bhagavati, who was later became the Chief Justice of India, who was instrumental with Justice P.N. Bhagavati, Justice V.R. Krishna Iyer, institutionalizing the legal aid and service system in India. But let me look at that, which Ram also in the initial remarks mentioned about, that will answer the Gujarat Legal Aid Committee, what they observed memorably way back in 1971. I quote, "The ignorance and illiteracy of law of poor leads to helplessness and further impoverishment." The committee further observed, If poor are educated in their rights and obligations, it would serve three important ends. Firstly, it would save them from legal troubles arising from ignorance. Secondly, it would enable them to seek legal advice in time, which would avoid further legal difficulties and prevent litigation. And lastly, thirdly, it would generate power among the poor. Now we are looking at legal empowerment. We use empowerment very loosely several times. So this they said in 1971, if you understand the law, if poor people have been explained, if they know about the law, that is the empowerment. So the third observation is very important. What the Gujarat Legal Aid Committee said in 1971, it would generate power among the poor because knowledge is power and it will make them self-reliant. Of course, we have, I will not go into much details of access to justice system. We have the National Legal Service Authority at the national level, state level, district level, taluk level, and legal aid and services has been given so much of prominence that the senior judge of the Supreme Court, the chief justice of the respective high courts, everybody takes a proactive role in looking at the access to justice becomes a reality and to implement legal aid and services to the poor and others. And even though you are a management school, you should collaborate with your state legal service authority, district legal service authority, and take important part in literacy, legal literacy, and disseminating about the noble objective of this access to justice. But at the same time, we have a lot of justice gap. And this we could look at because there's a massive demand for access to justice, but whereas we have very minimal people, okay? And that gap exists. Huge demand for legal services to the poor, inadequate resources of trained lawyers, trained judges, trained law students, trained social work students, trained lawyers. That's a complete gap. So therefore, this justice gap excludes the other people and community from the justice delivery, and thus it becomes necessary to address this issue. There's an interesting study in 2009, Global Insights on Access to Justice. I thought I'll briefly share with you that will explain about what is the justice gap at the world level. This recent survey of Global Insights on Access to Justice 2019 surveyed 101 countries and underscored the barriers and the hardships people face to solve everyday legal problems. The key findings are, first, justice problems are everywhere and frequent. The study said approximately 49% of the people surveyed experienced at least one legal problem in the last 2 years. Second, justice problems negatively impact people's life. 43% of those who surveyed reported that their legal problems adversely impacted their lives. They experienced physical or stress-related ill health as a result of their legal problems. Once you have a court case, there's a stress, stigmatization. If somebody is even without proper allegation, accusation is arrested, as a complete stigmatization by the society. If you go to a court, what is a negative impact? It's impact on the life, livelihood. So therefore, this has a justice problem, negatively impacts people's life. The world study said 43%. Third one, most people do not turn to lawyers and court. This is an increasingly coming up. I think that's the purpose of the access to justice, not only providing justice to the poor, but also see that people resolve the disputes among themselves. This is developing last 2 decades all over the world, including India. And that is a purpose. How do we create resolution of the disputes through mediation, negotiation, conciliation, ultimately arbitration and other? If you look at the Consumer Protection Act is the new 2019 legislation have added one full chapter, which is 5th chapter, if I am right, on mediation. So you have to, mediation is importantly developing. In fact, that's what my friend always says. Who is a good mediator in our family? Grandmother, grandfather. If the children have any dispute, generally, in our generation, we never used to go straight to my father or my mother, but we used to go to the grandmother. Can you tell father like this? Can you tell amma like this? So these are all, so now because of this, we are nuclear family, several problems. So look at that. That is what is required. That is what is required where you need at the personal level, professional level. You should learn. Don't spend time, energy, waste of money. I think that's the purpose of the access to justice, is to create community dispute resolution system. You have a great mediator, Sriram Panchu, who is a leading light from Chennai, who has been one of the mediator in the Babri Masjid dispute also. So therefore, this was the third one. Most people do not turn to lawyers and courts. The survey said about 29% of people do not go to lawyers or courts. Instead, they seek help from family members, friends to resolve their problem. You look at Manjunatha Dharmasthala in Karnataka, then amazing. Religion also has a positive role to play. Read about Manjunatha Dharmasthala. People go there to resolve their disputes. Okay, lastly, the world, this Global Insights and Access to Justice 2019 survey mentions about that people face a variety of obstacles to meeting their justice needs, beginning with their ability to recognize their problem and having at least some legal remedy. So these are the 4 important issues, key findings of the Global Insights and Access to Justice. Justice gap can be resolved only when we have students taking active part, not just a law student. Everybody can take care. Dispute resolution, in fact, you should also study as a part of wherever you study. Negotiation, I know, is a part of these commerce students, management students. In fact, when I was in the Gujarat National Law University, IIM Ahmedabad, one of the major course in the management is negotiation, international negotiation. So I think that was all our responsibility to see that how do we help extend a hand to resolve a dispute, petty dispute, major dispute, pre-litigation. You look at the Civil Procedure Code in India has been amended. They made a mandatory duty on the magistrate before you proceed to the trial. See, can you resolve? If you cannot, then you have to go for but litigation is ultimately the last resort, not the first to begin with. Let me come to the last issue, is about 4 pillars of justice. I think Tata Trust first time has come out with the report on India Justice Report last year, 2019. It's a very good report. And now the India Justice Report 2020 is about to be released in next week. So this is the first study where they studied 4 pillars of justice system: police, prison, judiciary, and legally. I found this is a very interesting document. All of you must read. Maybe next week when it is released, you can get the soft copy also. So let me look at the 2019 4 pillars of the justice system. Police, we know police have a lot of problems. Old Police Act, so far no new act has been made. There's several attempts to make a new police act. Police also has a lot of powers. As I said, privilege of a lawyer is to cross-examination. When I teach criminal law, I used to tell arrest is the privilege of a police. People used to say, If you take away our powers of arrest, what do we have? We have nothing. So that arrest, powers of arrest, police also has a duty obligation to prevent commission of crime, to protect law and order. They also have a problem. Their working hours. We know that we condemn the police, of course, when they are responsible, like a lockup deaths in Tamil Nadu, what we have seen, not Kundanakulam, yeah, a place in near Madurai. Madurai bench has mentioned about this custodial death of the two brothers. So when the issue like police exceeds their use of force, illegally arrest, put them behind the bars, then I think they have to be. But don't generalize all the police are like this. There are good police, there are bad police, and the ratio of good, bad may vary. So, but police also have a lot of problems. No working hours. If you look at lawyers, journalists, doctors, police also have no evenings. We wait for Saturday kab aata hai, Sunday, when we will get. Where are that? No, inordinate. They have to work for hours together. And hierarchy, a subculture prone to violence. Pay, working hour, no, several things there also. So, but at the same time, let me look at what the study points out. 2019, the several reports, but this is a very interesting study. Indian police is overstretched, overstressed, as there is one police person for 663 people. Of course. If you don't have a traffic constable, we don't follow our rules. We want. Okay. So police is unable to properly specialize. Look at. It's not like a CID story. If you look at, we do not have a properly trained investigative police in India. The police or the function should start from scene of the crime to the criminal. But the general modus operandi is you start from criminal to crime. So therefore, arrest, bring them, torture, and then take whether statement, confession, which are not admissible. So unless you develop the grassroots, the police station level, you have a trained people, those who are in the investigation. Simple, there's no need for brain mapping and DNA fingerprinting. At least scene of the crime. So that's is missing. So therefore you have police is unable to properly specialize, supervise themselves, address the special needs of vulnerable communities to carry out effective crime prevention and investigation. There's a total of over 7% women in police. Look at 7%. Okay. It states that policing is reduced to response and custody, and nowadays VVIP, bandobast duty is more important. Nobody takes importance about investigation police. So they are just reduced to a response and custody function, that too far from optimal levels. The police capacity is severely hurting due to inadequate staff, poorly representative, inaccessibility to majority of the population. But even then, public do not consider police as a public service. When I teach criminal procedure, I used to tell, it's like that. Police is also a public servant. When we go for a ration card to the we walk into the revenue office, we walk into the collector, we walk into the DEO, but people are scared to enter into the police station. So long ago, Khosla Commission said, when will the Indian police will become the people's police? Of course, there are changes, there are good things started coming up, but still that negative image and people are scared about the police is another major thing. In fact, they also have a problem. Public never cooperates with the police. So let me move to the prison. We know prison also slightly better than the police station. Because if you should also understand there's a difference between a police custody and a judicial custody called as a custody in prison. Because police custody is something which they are completely till the person is arrested, produced before the court within 24 hours, as a constitutional right, procedure right under the criminal procedure code. Till that time, police have a complete power. That's what if you look at for several years, the people were looking at how do we prevent this illegal arrest. That came this before DK Basu case in 1997, Justice Venkatachalaya judgment in 1996, Joginder Kumar was very important. So he found that if you go and purchase, if you go to a shop, you purchase something, then you ask for a receipt. Naturally, you should ask for a receipt. You should learn the basic principles of consumer law. Because if you don't take a receipt, whatever the money which you have paid, which will go unaccounted, they will escape from the payment of the tax. So similarly, if a person is arrested, why don't we have something, a document, which will help the person to challenge this illegal arrest? Our friends, relatives can go to the court or something they can file. That's where 1996 Justice Venkatachalaya was a former Chief Justice of India, former chairperson of the National Human Rights Commission, introduced custody memo concept. So then DK Basu. So therefore, prison, this was the major thing. So prison means when you are under the custody of the court. Once a person is arrested, produced before the court, court will send to the prison. We have a huge number of under trials. How do we deal with this problem? Under trials, if the Indian prison comprises of 68%. And who are these under trials? You have convict is different. Under trials, Indian prisons are full of under trials. Some may be necessary, they have to be kept. Majority are not necessary. But there is no monitoring, overcrowding of the jails. The under trials numbers have increased 22% between 2010 to 2016. What is a contributory factor? Increase in registered crime, overuse of arrest powers, investigation and prosecution delays, infrastructural deficiencies in getting prisons to court, paucity of judges, ineffective legal representation. We will come back to that third issue. Ineffective legal representation and case overload with consequently long trials. So the number of deaths in prison have also increased. Number of deaths in police custody, number of deaths in prison. If you are interested in understanding this, you should go to the National Human Rights Commission of India annual report. Every year this annual report. As a student, you should know whenever you write a research article or anything, you should have the authentic data. National Crime Records Bureau every year comes out with a crime in India. If you want to know about these deaths in police custody, illegal arrests, everything, go to the National Human Rights Commission, National Crime Records Bureau. So this report says the number of deaths in prison have also increased. There are only 10% of women across all levels of prison administration. As we have seen in the police, I think 7% are women. And in the prison, 7% women in police. And how much of women is 10% of women across levels of prison administration. So then the intention of changing prisons from places of detention, they are not properly, there are very few proper central prisons. And there are small prisons which do not have a proper facilities, shortage of staff, and these are the several problems. If you look at prison has a specific purpose. It is reformation, rehabilitation. I don't know how many have seen Do Anke Bara Haath, V. Shantaram, one of a classic film. Okay, that explains about a young jailer who takes a challenge that this Barahat means 6 hardened criminals. He wanted to reform them. So that shows prisons, in some states, prisons are called as correctional services. So that reformation, rehabilitation is very important. And there are a lot of problems within the prisons also, and jail, shortage of staff. You know, long ago, Justice Krishna Iyer said, if it is maybe in Sunil Batra case in 1980, he said, the serving of sentence in Tihar jail is like obtaining a criminology degree in India. No, once you go, you are coming out as a hardened criminal in these jails. So therefore, that is the second aspect of the pillar of justice system. Third is judiciary. We know judiciary also has a lot of problems. Delay is the major thing. Heavy workloads, inadequate human resources, budget, infrastructure, and several other things. I'll briefly touch upon judicial delays due to 3 factors: external factor, internal factors, quality factors. External factors are like monetary, cultural, geographical barriers, very long distances of the courts. It causes problem to litigants, witnesses, and other internal factors like a complex procedure. As I said, law is written in such a way that it should not be easily understood by anyone. The language, legalese they cause, they have written purposefully. So therefore, this is a complex procedure, technicalities which affect everyone. Quality factor is about the how the quality judges, quality prosecution, quality lawyers, quality judgments, speedy resolution of the disputes. I think these are all these, every case has to be decided on merits. The quality of human resources, orientation, training to lawyers, judges, all involved in the justice delivery system. Last is legal aid. As we have already discussed about, legal aid is, which is a very important, is a constitutional right. Article 39J we have added, Article 21 of the Indian Constitution. We say that legal aid, if you have not given, it will go against right to equality. So therefore, but legal aid has its own problem. It is unorganized, uncoordinated. There are several access blockers that keep many out of reach of the legal access. No proper communication, coordination between legal service authorities, colleges, NGOs, and others. No proper structuring of legal education to provide effective legal aid through the law schools. I'll end with Justice Amitabh Rai Committee. Justice Amitabh Rai Committee was constituted by the Supreme Court, particularly looking at the prison. How do we reform the prisons? If you have read Inhuman Conditions of Prison in 1386 prisons in India, you know, which this writ petition was filed before the Supreme Court of India by former Chief Justice of India, R.S. Lahoti. He said there are about 1,386 prisons in India. There's inhuman condition. It's a very interesting, you should look at. So in that context, Supreme Court has appointed Justice Amitabh Rai Committee, who was just retired from the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court appointed committee has said they have surveyed 12 states in India. They found one legal aid lawyer for every 161 persons to seek relief from the court. Legal aids were provided by state authorities in 482 prisons, by NGOs in 97 prisons, pro bono by individual lawyers in 90 jails. So this is briefly about what I shared with the 4 important issues. Of course, always we have problems and difficulties, but we should be optimistic. We are doing good, trying to do that. But in that, what is a missing link is there's no coordination between all these. If you look at the 4 pillars, police criticize, prison criticize, court criticize. So there's a lack of coordination between them. And the universities, teachers, and students have to play a very vital role in filling or see that justice gap is slowly reduced. Of course, we have not, like a poverty, we cannot eliminate. Maybe we can reduce the poverty. Similarly, issues of justice also, slowly it can be done. And it is not that only lawyers, judges, other law enforcement authorities' duty, it is everyone's duty. Thank you, Ram, for giving this opportunity to interact with you. In fact, whenever somebody invites, I have to update myself.